5 things you should know about gluten-free baking. In 2010, my daughter was diagnosed with celiac disease, an autoimmune disease that necessitates a strict, lifelong, gluten-free diet. It didn't come as a huge surprise. I had been intolerant to gluten for numerous years, and she had the classic symptoms of stomach pain, bloating, diarrhea and lethargy. Up until that point, I had avoided baking much gluten-free food, preferring to stick to a naturally gluten-free diet. The products in the shops were pretty bad, and my homemade attempts at gluten-free bread had been disasters. However, with a 2-year-old daughter to feed, I decided it was time to banish the gluten-free baking demons for good. If you've never baked anything gluten-free before, then there are some things you should know before you start. You can't just substitute any gluten-free flour, for example rice flour, for wheat flour. To make successful gluten-free food, you need to use a mix of different flours, because each has different properties that help create a successful end result. Making gluten-free bread is much easier than you might think. It's rather like making a cake, with the main difference being that you leave it to rise before baking it. You simply mix all the ingredients together to form a cake-like batter, pour it into a tin, leave it to rise and then bake. There is no gluten to work, and therefore no kneading or second rises are necessary. You often need to add ingredients that mimic gluten and its binding properties, like xanthan gum, psyllium husk or guar gum. They help bind the ingredients together and prevent the bake from crumbling. You only need a tiny bit of these in a recipe, but they can make the difference between a successful bake and a total failure. Accurate measuring is essential. Invest in a good pair of scales and don't rely on recipes that are measured in cups. Gluten-free baking can be fickle. One day a recipe will work and the next day it won't. I've read a lot about this and have discovered it can be to do with humidity and even height of sea level. If you don't have success with a recipe, don't give up. And when you find one that works, keep it somewhere safe for life. If you follow these simple tips, then making successful gluten-free bakes is just around the corner. It really isn't that tricky, and the results are well worth the effort. A bar entirely dedicated to Prosecco is coming to London. You can now actually have breakfast at Tiffany's. Habit Burgers are coming to London. If you think you might have celiac, see your doctor as a first port of call. For gluten-free baking inspiration, visit my blog or one of the many gluten-free blogs out there. I suggest the Gluten-Free Alchemist, Glutarama, GF Blogger or Gluten-Free Cup of Tea. They are all fabulous. More, 9 great independent gluten-free brands to try more, best gluten-free and dairy-free brunch spots in London. More, what's for afters, 10 of the best gluten-free desserts in London,